Okay, from this point on, in this episode, it is in regards to the test subjects, and you will be hearing from one of those test subjects. And this is in regards to the mind control, otherwise now we know as being that of MK Ultra. So let's go ahead and listen to this as everything connects together. And this is in regards to those missing children. And remember, I experienced this when I was growing up, seeing these milk cartons. So I am part of that history. So let's go ahead and begin this. I will be putting this at 1.5 times the speed. So please listen close and bear with me.
All right, so when you asked, the question was asked, what about some of the mind effects? Yeah, I'll try to answer that and say what I recall of the program, because I was part of it also. Well, nothing.
As an officer or a civilian who was used?
Used is the correct term, very definitely used.
You were subjected to the
Well, yes, I was subjected to the, let's say, the mind control field, not as I initially went in the program, because they wanted me at one point for my psychic metaphysical abilities, and you don't subject a person who is sensitive to those kind of fields, because they know they will wipe them out, or alter them so drastically that they're useless. But they assigned me to a particular part of the program involving the indoctrination of the younger recruits, put it that way. And after, let us say, one of the first attempts at indoctrination, which turned out to be a total disaster, I said, there's no way I will have any part of this program, no matter what you do or say. So they said, oh, yes, you will. And I said, well, no, I won't. So they put me in front of this roasting oven, if you will, the mind beam, and it did do damage to me. And finally, somebody else said, shut it off. He isn't going to give in to it. I suffered some damage, but not severe damage as some others did. And it did affect me to some extent. Duncan was affected much more heavily for other reasons. But nevertheless, the effects were, in some cases, totally disastrous. They burned brains out, and people just dropped dead. Neither of us were among this category, but there were other recruits, young kids they picked up, I say, off the streets, where they find them. Basic age bracket was between 12 and 16.
So that's where a lot of disappearing
Yes.
kids.
So 10,000 we estimate went to Montauk. The total number would be about 250,000 with 25 stations estimated. What the actual final directives, what the final thrust of the program was in terms of these kids, we had never come up with the answers. They wanted them fully programmed for something, and we never found out what. And eventually they disappeared off the station and were sent from various locations and places. But they were initially subjected to one form of programming, and later on it changed into a somewhat more humane, a somewhat faster and less obtrusive form of programming and conditioning using electronic techniques. The original was Reichian and was more physical and was less sophisticated. The later programs actually worked out the techniques to use computers, electronic programming, and the electronic use of the Reichian techniques. And it became very fast, very quick, and usually took very well on the side things. And these kids would never know what happened to them. They shipped back to where they got them or to where they wanted them to go. They would know better.
Are you aware of the names or identities or the address locations of any of the
I've run into a number of people over the years, let's say in the last 3 years, since I became aware of the program and the fact that I was part of it. There is a very specific field identity pattern you can detect. If you're sensitive enough to read human auras, you can spot a person that's been through the Montauk program 5 miles away. Their auras are very distinctive in the way that they've been altered. You can tell them immediately. You know what you're looking for. And I've spotted many. I would say over a dozen. Mostly in the Long Island, New York area.
Wasn't that when Newman was officially dead, right?
Well, correct. Officially he was dead, but he's very much alive. Throughout this entire program, all the way through 83 and for quite some time after that, up until through this year.
Well, is that time away?
I don't know exactly the whole story of what's happened to Von Neumann since, because he ran into a problem with the government, and he ran into two problems. One, he suffered a personality split himself about 1977. Whether it's because of some of the experiments he was on, or the strain, we don't know. He resigned as director. He said he was no longer fit. The government wouldn't leave him alone. They wouldn't let him leave. They said he would remain as a consultant, which was agreeable to him, to the balance of the program. Those are other reasons why he had to be there, which goes back into the Hope Philadelphia experiment. But he remained on as a consultant. At the end, he told them, he said, when this program is over, he says, I'm not going to work for the government again, ever, no matter what you say. He says, I'm through with you. He says, I'm not part of any of your government operations. And he retired to his little farm and led a relatively peaceful life for a period of time until he was harassed again in the last year and a half. That's not part of the Montauk thing.
Was he living under another name then?
He was. When was pseudonym.
When did he officially die?
1957. That's the official death date.
What happened to the other scientists? Ralph Cooley and when was it intimate?
Proulx was there until 83.
Yeah.
And then he went and worked in different corporations and disappeared. Hunterman was seen to turn up. You ran into him.
Yeah, a couple of times under that.
Yeah, and then he
Others
disappeared.
ran for the hills, I think.
Most of them did. They ran to the hills.
Well, let's continue.
Okay, so there we have it as far as the test subjects. and what they went through as far as this mind-altering programming, which, like I said, became MK Ultra. So please stay tuned as we will continue forward. And this is all leading into my theory and exposing different factors of how it connects with my time loop theory. And it, like I said, it has to do with time travel. Because what they're talking about eventually leads into more on that time travel lead in through this MK Ultra programming that they were discussing. And at one point, you will also hear the account of when they were opening up these portals and whatnot. What really brought them to be able to do that was a weather modification device. Okay? Now, I want you to understand something as far as my thoughts, my opinions. WMD. You remember that once stood for Weapons of Mass Destruction. Did we, in fact, illegally invade a country based on hearsay evidence in order to seize WMD, but not necessarily a weapon of mass destruction that we might think of, but a weather modification device that could potentially be a weapon of mass destruction. You have to connect dots in order to really understand. But this weather modification device that they used, and I believe what it is stated is that it was no larger than about a shoebox size. And that was technology way back then. We've come a long ways, baby. So, on that note, we shall conclude for this episode and continue on. Okay, this is going to have to be an add-on here because interesting question was brought up in regards to these test subjects and whether they were subjected to injectable drugs during their testing procedures. And so we are going to take a listen to that real quick, and I will add that to the previous episode, if you will.
Continue on the description of the Phoenix Project.
I just have one more question about the Montauk. Were any of the subjects given psychotropic substances? LSD?
I don't know.
We don't believe so.
My gut feeling is no.
In conjunction with
I don't believe they
Well,
were.
they used other drugs. They had one drug that would be used in connection with the Reich programming to make them more receptive.
This was
Do you
not
know
the
the name of the drug, the chemical name, or generic name?
No, I don't.
No knowledge of that at all.
Describe the effects of that alone were in conjunction with the...
Okay, the effects would make you horny as hell. That's essentially what it would do. It would make you very sexually active.
Also euphoric at the same time.
And euphoric?
But that would go along with it.
Right.
What was the purpose of being euphoric? All right. Essentially, I don't.
Where they get chairs, you know?
Well, we're not sure whether they got the chair itself from the aliens, but the technology base. Okay, you get it. The prototype came from the aliens.
Were they working across the exchange? I'm sorry.
We don't know.
Also, I had another question on what you were describing before. Could this experience that is becoming very common of the UFO abduction could have been programmed by the government and mind control?
Sure, could be. Not all of it, but some of it probably is. But they got this chair from the aliens, or through some connection. Another associate of ours was on the station managing money, and he actually went out and bought this chair from somebody else. They got boom. So what they essentially did is they took this chair, they made one computer to interface the chair itself to scan the digital codes, and then another computer to interface it to a special computer to the transmitter, then the transmitter. What they actually ended up with, in essence, was a mind amplifier. Duncan here, his major responsibility on the station, he was one of the selected individuals. He had been through a lot of psychic training, by the government to sit in that chair and generate thought form. The idea they had is, okay, they can transmit the signature digitally, that worked very well. They can put the person in the orgasmic state digitally, that worked very well. But they wanted the human being to generate the actual thought form, the details of what they wanted done. From the chair? From the chair, yes. In other words, they would put into Duncan's mind, when he's in a trance, what they want him to think of, what they want him to think of that he's doing. The chair would pick it up. After the data was set, that would turn on the target individual. His thoughts are channeled directly through the transmitter to the individual. It worked, but it didn't work. It worked very well, extremely well. But they found another capability. Let's say they were targeted good. Tuesday, 4 a.m. They hit. Imagine discovered that Bill was actually hit 2 weeks later. What did they discover? They did not block the time of the person. What did they get? They got a time machine. Next great idea they got was, okay, let's tell Duncan to think of a vortex connecting 1981 to 1947. He would do is go back. They got a vortex going from 1981 to 1947. You can walk through. Great. Now,
Duncan had to be, you have to be really good to be able to visualize.
Duncan's very good at
You have to
visualizing.
be really good. I would think.
Well, let's not go into that at this point.
What you're talking about at this point, that's why I bring it up.
The Nestor is a word in the dictionary.
Where are you?
Well, we're talking earlier capabilities, not today. He was also raked over as well. But, what they discovered is, okay,
Okay, so we're going to leave it at that, and we'll see you on the next episode.